We'll get started then. So at this point, we're FONOM's happy to have Craig Bartlett with us. Craig has born and raised in North Bay, but don't hold that against him. He worked for the region of Durham, helping run their waste management program. Craig was instrumental on steering the Blue Box while he was with Durham and the M3RC. He's been an advocate for the Blue Box transition in Ontario for a great length of time. We're not where we are today without his efforts and his work. So now he works with GFL, and we're glad to have him walk us through what they have to offer and how they envision the transition. Thank you. Go ahead.
So thanks, Matt. And Matt, that's a really kind introduction. So yeah, from North Bay, and full disclosure, Mac and I went to high school together. So I know the next time I see him, I'm going to owe him beer and wings because he gave me that introduction. And to be quite honest with you folks, I'm just so happy to be here with you guys. I was born and raised in Northern Ontario. Probably a number of the members that you've got on the line there, Mac, I've probably ripped up their snowmobile trails, whether it's out in Temiskaming area or up in Perry Sound or up towards Cochrane. And it's just you know, an incredible place to live and to grow up. And so I really do have my roots back in North Bay. My father still lives there. We still have a family cottage on Lake Nipissing. So the North means a lot to me. And it's something that I'm really proud that working now with GFL, that we actually have the potential and the opportunity to create an opportunity in Northern Ontario for more jobs centered around the environment, in particular recycling, because that's in essence what's really important to me. Just really quickly, so like I said, Mac and I went to school together, and I would be remiss if I didn't point out that Mac has been such a strong advocate, such a strong voice, and really leading AMO's advocacy with regards to this transition. And as each of you probably know, Ontario-wide, this represents well over $130 million to municipalities. So it's a substantial gain. And I kind of hearken it to somebody that I worked many, many years with in the region of Durham that I think a lot of you folks probably know, and that's Roger Anderson. You know, this is not as big, but you know, when you look at the gas tax and what Roger advocated for at the time, it did have significant assistance to municipalities. And I worked, and I was really fortunate to work with Roger Anderson for 10 years. Him and I was not only one of his employees, but at the end I became one of his good friends. And you know, to this day I miss Roger. He was just such a passionate voice for municipalities, and I really carry a lot of what Roger believes in. And you know, going from municipalities to the private sector, I really do have on a municipal hat when I look at things and how it impacts not only you as politicians, but the folks you serve. And my motto always when I was working in municipal life was, I'm going to do what's best for our residents, because at the end of the day, I want to get the politicians reelected. And if you take that approach, you've got a pretty good sustainable career in municipal life. And but you know, it's true. You folks are there to serve your constituents, and us as your civil servants, bringing things to you to approve that makes the most sense, makes the most economic sense to the folks that you serve, and that's always served us well. So that long diatribe, and Mac will tell you that's typical Craig. He loves to talk. So let's just get into the presentation here. So I'm going to talk to you about Green for Life and how we are really looking to get involved in the new Blue Box regulations that just came out in June of this year, and there's significant changes to the regulation. So again, taking that financial burden off of the taxpayers and putting it onto the producers where it really needs to be in terms of bringing about change in packaging and that whole issue of design for the environment. So I'll just go through the presentation. I'll tell you why a GFL Powered Pro is beneficial to you and your community. I'll introduce our RRA, which stands for the Resource Recovery Alliance, which is the pro that we've set up. A little bit of our regulatory framework and timelines, and then something that really isn't applicable to municipalities, but where there is a bit of a tie-in that might be of interest to you folks is our representation agreement, and then I'll provide some time for questions and answers. So thanks, Matt. Next slide. And we can go to the next one. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide. As you know, the reg came out June 3rd, and it looks to transition the Blue Box program in Ontario starting July of 2023. That's sooner than what was anticipated. The initial thoughts were it was going to start January of 2023. So this really only gives us about 30 months to transition all of Ontario to a producer-led recycling program. I think the most relevant point on this slide is the last point. So as you can probably see in my background, it's a mural of the city of Vancouver. I'm fortunate to actually be working out in BC right now. And in fact, that's my view every day out of my office. And I came out here to help GFL launch the post-collection program for all of BC. So GFL was successful in being awarded the contractor to manage all of British Columbia's post-consumer recycling program. Basically, that means where a collector collects recycling, where depots collect recycling, we are responsible for receiving all of that material, for processing it, for readying it for end markets, and for obtaining the best commodity price for it. And probably the biggest component of that is ensuring that it meets a chain of custody protocol, which is a really, really robust reporting system that allows them to basically track material from point of origin to final destination and final use. So we launched this we were awarded the contract in December of 2019, and I came out to BC in March. I retired from the region in February, and from March until June, we've spent over $25 million in new infrastructure, modifying buildings, and we launched this program on May 19th, 2020, on time, on budget, and during a pandemic. So it was a real big undertaking, but it really positioned us well to understand what a full EPR program looks like. And it's also allowed us to set up some really important tracking infrastructure that allows us to really meet the stringent and really, I think, even more stringent compliance reporting obligations that the new regulations have. Next slide, Matt. So Northern Ontario, it really is connected to GFL. So GFL is located in Vaughan, Ontario. However, the owner, Patrick DeVigi, he is true and true a Northern Ontario boy, born and raised in Sault Ste. Marie. He was a hockey player. He was drafted. He was a goalie. So that tells you he's got something that's maybe missing a bit, because if you're a goalie, you know, you're just not usually right all there. So, but Patrick's a fantastic guy. He's an entrepreneur, and he's grown this company into over a $12 billion company. Matt, if you can flip to the next screen. So here's where we are in Canada. You will see that we have got a broad-based presence right across the country. And where this is really relevant, folks, is that when you get into EPR, as I mentioned, British Columbia is the first to go with full EPR. Ontario is next, and we have been having discussions out in Alberta, discussions in Saskatchewan, more work is being done in Manitoba. So what we're seeing is Ontario and BC have really been the catalyst for this thing to go nationwide, and really GFL with all of its assets, with all of its different recycling campuses that we have across Canada, we really are positioned well to really be a key service provider in this space. We have over 15,000 employees through Canada and the United States, and we operate over 900 residential curbside collection contracts across North America, and we service over 4 million households. And I think what's really important as well, if you flip to the next slide, Mac, this shows where we are in Ontario. And in Ontario right now, we manage about 650,000 tons of recycling from the province of Ontario. Now, not all of that is residential. We do commercial as well. But if you look at Ontario in terms of what it's going to generate in terms of recycling material, it's about 1 million tons. I think what we've proven is that GFL not only has the experience, but we have the assets and we have the know-how to deliver a very complicated program that is going to be phased in over a 30-month period. So with that, we again feel that we are really well served to provide the services. One thing that you'll notice is we do have a nice big green star there up in North Bay, where we just recently acquired a material recovery facility. And we really look to focus a lot of new investment and hire lots of new folks from your communities that can be part and parcel of this new program. You know, one other thing that we think is really important as well is we understand that we're a service provider. We service a lot of your communities. We service a lot of municipalities right across Ontario. And one thing that we want to do is work collaboratively with municipalities. You know, if you folks want to still have a call center and be part of the system, and you know, you have folks that want to be working in that area where you want to continue to have municipal staff that perhaps, you know, your call center doesn't only deal with waste management, it deals with everything from cemeteries to, you know, water. You know, maybe it makes sense for you to continue to have that on and be compensated for that. So, you know, one thing that GFL really hopes to do is to work collaboratively with all the communities to make sure, number one, that when we launch this program, that it's completely seamless. Again, I harken back to what do you folks hear the most is when services aren't delivered. So for us and me being here, you know, one thing that I've really voiced my concern about is how important it is to ensure seamless transition so it doesn't disrupt your lives, your staff's lives with endless calls, and then it brings up, you know, did we make the right decision to give this to industry? And then the second part is really working collaboratively to have your, oh, we can go to the next slide because it ties in, Max. So, you know, we're building state-of-the-art recycling facilities where we can handle a much more expanded suite of materials that the new regulations going to require. So, you know, one of the real problems with municipalities is, you know, producers are always changing their packaging, and for us to be really adept and be able to really maneuver quickly in a municipality to get all those changes to handle their packaging, you know, we got to go through processes. You got budgeting, you got to have a capital program, you got to get your council authority. So you're really not as adept at adjusting to all these changes that are happening so quickly in the marketplace. You know, that's an area that the private sector really excels in, and that's an area that GFL has really spent a lot of time and effort to grow their fleet of recycling facilities that are able to handle a complex mixture of recycling materials. Next slide, Mac. So it is going to be complex, folks. We're going to be servicing 5.5 million homes. And right now, there's probably about 120,000 truckloads of material that are collected every year. And so you think there's 300 trucks out in Ontario collecting at least 2 loads of recycling every day. With the new regs, we're going to be expanding. So perhaps some of the folks on the phone, you don't have a recycling program. Well, I think that's one of the wins for municipalities in this new reg is that we do get to expand into, I think, what has been a long overlooked area of service, and that's Northern Ontario, Northwestern Ontario. And there's so many communities there that have people that want to recycle. You know, perhaps they got to go to a depot, or perhaps they're just throwing that stuff in the garbage. And one of the nice things about this new program is you know what, we're not going to give you a C program where maybe we collect your paper and your aluminum cans. The beautiful thing about this program is that we're going to standardize it across Ontario, so that if you are up in Timmins and you want to recycle something, when you come down to Toronto, when you go over to London, when you go to Ottawa, you know what? It's simplicity. It's the same material. It's consistent, and that's where you're going to really get that real benefit from the program, that people know definitively what put in, and it should really help us with our capture rates and take a lot of that pressure off a lot of the small Northern Ontario landfills that struggle just to keep up with the waste that's being generated. Next slide, Matt. So if you look at this slide, it shows basically over 3 years how this program is going to transition. And it's unfortunate because the government did kind of delay the implementation in Northern Ontario, as you can see from this map, but it also talks a lot to the complexity. So really the big areas, obviously, like Toronto represents over 200,000 tons. So it represents 20% of the province's blue box materials. So, that's where obviously it's a fairly easy one to implement because there's a lot of infrastructure in place. As we branch out, it's going to need new investments, new infrastructure. And really what we've done is we've really started to look at how we would effectively and efficiently bring Ontario on to have one of the best blue box programs in the world. And we have some proprietary software that we're actually using right now that uses some fairly complex algorithms to look at time and distance analysis, to look at where we should be buying and locating our facilities. And in fact, that's one of the reasons that we've actually bought the North Bay recycling facility through some of the work we've been doing with our optimization software. Next slide, Mac. So what we've done is we've actually set up a new pro, and it's a GFL-led pro. And the reason we set it up is we know we are trusted, we're experienced, we're cost-effective, we have proven environmental outcomes, and for our producers, it's so important for their brands. The last thing they want is their brand showing up on the front page of the Toronto Star or on the CTV News that it's found on a beach in the Philippines. So, they want to make sure that they've got a really good partner that they can trust, that when that material goes into the box, that material is going to get to a certified end market that has all of the proper regulatory approvals and processes in place. Next slide, Mac. So in terms of experience, like I said, we process a lot of Ontario's recycling materials right now, not only the municipal, but also commercial. We have the boots on the ground and we know how to do this. Next slide, Mac. Trusted. So we pretty well go through a procurement process for every contract that we have with municipalities. And I mentioned over 900 across North America. As all of you folks are very well aware, it is typically through a tender or an RFP process. So we are competing against other service providers, and we have developed some pretty innovative and unique business approaches that let us be the lowest cost provider and still provide a good, efficient service. And we're quite confident that with the services that we provide, you talk with colleagues around the province, across Canada, and we are a service provider that can be trusted in terms of really creating fair, inclusive, and transparent services. And we also want to work with you guys to really understand your community needs and get staff from your local communities involved with us as well. Next slide, Nick. Cost efficient, as I mentioned, we are bidding on a lot of this work, and as a result of having to go through those processes, we have to be cost efficient. And that's one thing that we think we're a leader in terms of the service offerings that we have for our producer community. Next slide. Proven environmental outcomes. This is so critical now. And as Mac, I heard him earlier say, Northern Ontario, we care about the environment, and more and more of our our population, the young folks, it's like, why can't I recycle this? And we're challenged every day. And I'm sure as politicians, you also hear, why can't we accept this? Why don't you do this? Why don't we have a recycling program at our arena? Those are things where, GFL has really, worked on how do we really successfully reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. So we've spent a lot of time looking at renewable natural gas with our collection fleet. We're into advanced composting systems. We're doing energy generation from our landfills. So we're doing a lot of innovation that a lot of the producers really want to emulate, and to really have that sustainability messaging that they can go to the consumers with as well. And that's where there's a real good tie-in between GFL and the producer community. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we created the Resource Recovery Alliance. So this is going to be a pro that in essence works with the producer community. Next slide, Mac. So what we did is we actually bought the Canadian Stewardship Services Alliance, known as CSSA, and we bought it. They've got 8 very specialized staff, and they are really the back end of an EPR program. They administer all of the reporting requirements. They do the interface with billing with producers. And this, as a municipal guy, I was always quick to criticize these folks. And it's funny, I feel like I'm on the dark side now, but being on the dark side, sometimes you really get to put on the different glasses and understand the complexity of the regulatory requirements, compliance reporting. And we recognize as GFL that without this back-end reporting system, it was really going to be difficult to have a true and effective, and quite frankly, a fully compliant program that we can be part of and run. So this has been probably one of the most important components of our alliance is the acquisition of CSSA for all of our regulatory reporting and compliance reporting. Next slide, Mac. So, we understand, the value of all of our producers. In fact, we service a lot of them with our commercial services. So it's really important that they have a voice. And similar to what you do with FONOM, we actually set up the Producer Alliance Council, where that Producer Alliance Council will be made up of our membership, and they will actually help to steer our pro and give direction. And, it's really important that, our producers don't feel like they're being dominated by one sector. You don't have a grocer or a restaurant sector that is really influencing all of the decisions. This will be a wide range of producers from different sectors, and it will give us the best type of recycling program we feel with this type of approach with the collaborative partnership that we're establishing. Next slide, Mac. So key features of our pro is we are actually providing no upfront investments or money for our producers. We're giving them guarantees for 100% of your recovery targets. There's no onerous long-term contracts. As you've seen, we have state-of-the-art recycling technology right across Canada. So a lot of the producers are not just Ontario-based; they are national. In fact, they're international. And GFL has an expansive footprint down in the United States as well. And then, what's really important to them is the guaranteed confidentiality of their customer data. So we really have 4 cornerstones for our pro, and that's really the development. So we're working with our producers to develop a code of conduct, and that's going to be really important, that transparency. It gives them a voice to provide input at regular meetings, financial decisions, and to discuss any local or commercial concerns. What's really important for you folks, and it is for them, is review processes of management services and contracts. And most critical to them is being able to look at dashboards of their monthly environmental outcomes and reports against various performance standards that are required under the new legislation. Next slide. So we'll skip this one. It's really not applicable to our group, but it just talks about the different software we're using for confidentiality. This one I think is important for this group. So, you know, a lot of the producers have been said, oh, you got to sign on, you got to sign on. And we've quite frankly been saying to our producer community, guys, you have until October 1st. You know, spend the time, go out there, kick the tires, make sure you're really doing your research to pick the proper pro. So one thing that Mac and Dave Gordon have been big advocates for with this legislation is to ensure that there's competition in the marketplace. And I can tell you, you know, launching the BC program, you're not going to have one company that has a monopoly. And, you know, quite frankly, as you see with GFL in Ontario, you think, geez, you know, it's just going to be GFL green. I'm going to have to put my sunglasses on just because they're going to have these green trucks everywhere. Well, the fact is, out in BC, where it's only 200,000 tons, which is about it's about a fifth of what Ontario will generate. I use 30 different service providers to assist us with this work. You know, the work that's been put in front of us in Ontario is a massive undertaking, and it's going to take a village to make sure that this thing is rolled out, it's seamless, and it's cost effective. So, you know, so you folks that are sitting there thinking, oh, you know what, here's a monopoly that's going to really dictate this market. No, in fact, we understand the real importance of working with other service providers. And that's probably one of GFL's strengths, is that we do have really good collaborative partnerships with the likes of big companies, you know, the likes of Waste Connections, Waste Management, and a lot of the local service providers in your communities as well. Next slide, Mac. So, you know, we really want to make sure that not only do municipalities have a voice, you know, when they have concerns, and we see that out here in BC, and we work collaboratively with municipalities, and I've developed some really good, solid relationships with municipal folks because I understand how important that is, and that we want our producers to have a strong voice. And especially the first part of this process will be sort of the rule making for pros. And you really want somebody that understands collection, understands processing to be at that table, so that we can ensure a seamless transition for all you folks to make sure that we do have and continue to have the best recycling program in Ontario. And that's it, Max. So let me go to the next slide. And that's it. I can't hear you, Mac, if you are saying anything.
Sorry, believe it or not, I didn't get a text from a single person from the city of North Bay wanting to ask you a question. You used up a lot of your time. I'm just wondering if the communities have a question, or their staff have questions in regards to your pro or any other pro, or if they're getting collection all of a sudden now from GFL, would they have an opportunity? Is there an individual in Ontario that they should reach out to for questions, or should they just go through you and you'll make the connection for them?
Yeah, so like yesterday, Mac, you know, just if you have anybody, I know St. Charles reached out to you and you reached out to me, and by all means, you know what, if there's anything that you guys need, send it through to you, Mac, you know, and we'll make sure you're taken care of. And yeah, just here to help you guys.
Okay. Well, Craig, thanks very much for your presentation. Informative. It's good to, we were concerned from the municipal sector that there would only be one pro, and now there's multiple. So it's, and we're happy that that GFL, you know, has a long reputation of working in Ontario, and they've got people that know the geography of the province and the challenges in the province, so, and the distance in the province. So glad you're with them, and thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll be in touch in the future.
Well, Mac, thanks a lot for setting this up and inviting me. And again, nice talking with the group. And you know, I miss North Bay, and hope to be back there soon. So all the best to everyone, and have a great day.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.